All right, listeners, super excited for today's interview because today I get to chat with the man himself, Stu McLaren, all about why we need to establish recurring revenue in our business models. Now, Stu has 12 years of experience helping entrepreneurs like you build recurring revenue in your business, leveraging membership platforms. He's the host of the Marketing Your Business podcast. He's the founder of Tribe and the co-founder of Searchy. Stu, how's it going, sir?
Listen, I'm great and excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, super excited. So, here's where I want to kind of dive in is we've now entered into 2021. We're edging off of the first quarter of 2021. So many spent the last 12 months rushing online to promote their products and services. And if the landscape wasn't crowded before, it's certainly gotten crowded now, which is an okay thing. But what are you seeing as the reasons why membership platforms are still so important moving forward, even in a crowded digital landscape?
Well, I think if 2020 taught us anything, is that we just have no idea what is going to happen, right? Like, I've got friends who own brick and mortar restaurants and breweries and retail shops and services, and their worlds were just completely turned upside down. Who would have thought that the government would have said, no, you can't open your doors. People are not allowed to come in to your facility. Like, none of us would have ever imagined a world in which that would happen, but it did. And so I think what it did was it created a tremendous amount of uncertainty for not only, brick and mortar services and businesses, but for everybody. And we were all feeling it, right? Like it's a world that none of us have had to navigate before. We didn't know how to handle it, how to move forward, what was going to happen. So I think now that we are a year removed from, the beginnings, we have a lot more insight and we have a lot more awareness of, what's transpired. And what I can tell you is that I have dear friends that do own brick and mortar businesses. Like one of my really good friends who I've been, going back and forth with just today, in fact, was in my wedding party, owns a restaurant, and they've had to shut down multiple times. His world has been turned upside down. I have friends who own retail shops, same thing. And, it's heartbreaking because as entrepreneurs, we pour so much into growing our business. To have a curveball like that thrown and to see what's happened, there was a story in one of the Toronto newspapers this year. There was a gentleman who owned a restaurant. It had been in his family, I think, for 4 or 5 generations. And they had to declare bankruptcy this year because they couldn't keep it afloat. And like my heart just breaks thinking about like the legacy of that business having to close because of COVID. So those are the stories that we hear. And my heart goes out to those business owners because of knowing what they've poured into it. But the other side of the story is that the online space, particularly in memberships, because this is the world in which I engage with literally tens of thousands of business owners, that world is thriving. And I'll give you some examples of how some who already had digital memberships were not only survived this year, but thrived through this year, but also some who also own brick and mortar businesses who saw different opportunities, like Casey Hope as an example. So she owns an art studio. Adults come into her art studio to learn art. Kids come into her art studio to learn art. It completely got shut down because of COVID. Now, she sent me a message last year, right about mid-May, and she just said, Stu, I'm just so grateful to have the digital membership. She also has a calligraphy membership where she's teaching people calligraphy. And that membership was not only like, keeping the lights on and paying the bills and, paying her staff, but this year it grew more than it's ever grown in any other year. And not only that, but she also saw an opportunity because when COVID happened, there were millions of us with young kids, parents who are now at home, like all of a sudden becoming homeschooling teachers, like asking ourselves, how the heck do we keep the kids busy while we are growing the business and doing all the things, right? And Casey saw that and she said, well, wait a minute, like I'm normally teaching kids art in the studio. Why don't I just turn this into a membership? And she did. And in a 1-year period, she's grown this brand new membership from 0 to more than 500 plus members. And so I'm sharing this with you because I think now more than ever, people are more open to learning virtually and online. And there were even studies that were done this past year where people were saying how like 69% of people in the study said that they were looking to use the quarantine as an opportunity to grow personally, to improve themselves. I think it's given people an opportunity to get into rhythms that they wouldn't normally get into. Like, perfect example for me, my fitness, it's at probably the best I've ever been, aside from when I was in college and university. And why? Because I've been so dang consistent on that Peloton, because I've gotten into a rhythm that I normally wouldn't be able to get into when I was traveling and so forth. So I just think that in the online space, we see it in particular. People are open, they're receptive, they're committed, they're learning, and they're engaging in a way in which they have not before. And as a result of that, online memberships are booming and thriving.
I love that you gave so much context of individuals who were able not just to establish a brand online, but for individuals who had to endure so much of what happened in 2020, particularly with brick and mortars. And I had so many clients go through similar experiences and were able to find not just a way to get by in 2020, but a way to, as you said, a way to thrive. And it's so beautiful to hear those stories. When we look at really just brand growth, we kind of see it in the three phases: awareness, nurturing that awareness, and then leading it into a conversion. I'm curious, with where we're at right now, what are your tips or your advice on how individuals who are just now getting into the online space or just thinking about setting up that platform for the first time, about how to drive awareness into the mission or into the impact that they're trying to have with their site or with their membership?
Yeah, I think there are a couple key things to think about. Like, when you're connecting with people, you got to remember that, behind every screen, behind every stat is a person, right? And those people have thoughts, they have feelings, they have emotions, and that's where we first really want to try to connect with people, is at the heart level. If you can capture and connect with somebody at the heart level, then they're going to be way more open and receptive to anything that you may have and offer them. But if you don't connect there and you're purely just trying to connect on the logic of why somebody should do business with you, you're going to find that those conversations are much more challenging, much more difficult, much more, quote, salesy, because you're trying to convince somebody. When you connect with somebody first, you don't have to convince them. They're much more open and receptive to whatever you may have to say. So part of that means that we've got to find points of connection, and you got to look inside, and you got to realize, like, there are parts of your life, parts of, what you're doing as a business that are going to connect with people. So I'll give you an example. Like, I just mentioned the Peloton, and, anybody who is listening and watching, they're going to, if they are on the Peloton, like, oh, I'm on the Peloton, and you should totally look me up. I'm just my name, Stu McLaren. Come follow me. Come, let's, ride together. Like, every time I mention that, anybody who's got a Peloton, they reach out, and now we're connecting on that level. You know what I mean? And we have this mutual respect of, like, what our times are and our outputs are and our consistency is and the badges we're earning. And I now, get invited to ride with different people and cheer them on when they're hitting certain milestones and stuff like that. Like, that's a point of connection. And what I'm sharing is that we want to look for points of connection. So another point of connection, my wife just shared with me that there's a family that we just moved to a new area, and there's a family nearby that also adopted from South Africa. And my son, we adopted from South Africa. That's another point of connection. So we're looking, we're now in, chatting with them and connecting with them. And why? Because that's a point of connection. So you want to kind of mine your own life for different points of connection, whether that's the Peloton, whether that's like, the adoption, whether that's the fact that I was born in England, that's another point of connection. Like, all these points of connection, those are where you begin connecting with people, and you've got to be intentional about sharing them. That's first and foremost. Second thing that I would say is that you also want to be clear about how you are helping people and what that journey looks like. So more than anything, I encourage people to cast that vision for people and to hold the space of what's possible, because nobody likes people in their lives who are constantly telling them the things that they can't do or that they, is not possible. We are naturally drawn to people who believe in us, and we all need it. Like, I can specifically tell you points in time in my life where somebody believed in me more than I believed in myself. Like there was a point when I was in my early 20s and there were two gentlemen. One was, his name was Bob Yurichuk, another person named Yuri Chabursky. They believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. They took a chance on me when I, did. There was another time specifically with one of my friends and mentors, Reed Tracy. He believed in me more than I believed in myself. And it began to open me up to what was possible. And so I'm sharing this because unless you're clear about what is possible for people, then they're not going to be clear either. And so once you get the clarity of like, here's where you are, here's where you can be, and you hold that space for people. And now what begins to happen is now you start to reframe the beliefs in them in terms of what's possible for them. And many times there's mainly three reasons people won't buy from us. One is that they don't believe in you. Number two, they don't believe in your product. Or number three, and this to me is the biggest one of all, is that they don't believe in themselves. And so this is why we got to hold that space for them. And we do need to show them example after example of people just like them who have been where they were and have now gotten to where they want to get to, and hold that space to reframe those beliefs. And once we start doing that, now is when people become way more open to joining us.
The thing that really resonates with me about that is oftentimes when I see marketing messages go out online, they're marketing whatever the product or whatever the service is. They're not talking about the results. They're not talking about the outcome. They're not talking about the transformation. I'm not on Instagram holding a credit card. I don't surf Facebook with my wallet in my hand. I'm not there to buy anything. I'm there to get value. I'm there to be entertained. I'm there to be inspired. I'm there to be informed. So it's things like that that capture my attention. And when someone starts to talk about not just a program that's on, because I don't think anyone cares. And let's take Tribe, for example. When you're talking about Tribe, you're not talking about, attend my conference. I have a conference for entrepreneurs. That's not right. The angle. What you're talking about is I help entrepreneurs build recurring revenue. And if you're an entrepreneur who's been looking to build recurring revenue, predictable revenue, all of a sudden there's a resonance there. There's a connection there because your entire packaging is about the outcome, the result, or the transformation. I'd love for you to just unpack that a little bit more.
You're spot on, man. I mean, at the end of the day, like people are not buying, the stuff. People don't care about stuff. We don't want stuff. We want the outcome and that transformation. And that's what I'm talking about holding that space for people in terms of what's possible. That's where you want to spend the majority of your energy, is speaking about that and giving people insights as to how others have gotten there through what it is that you teach. People will make the connection naturally, which is like, when you share the stories and you are essentially a cheerleader for, what's possible, people bridge that gap naturally. You don't have to sell them on anything because they automatically, at a subconscious level, they know that you are the vehicle that helped close that gap faster and easier. Yes, people could 100%, in my case, as an example, people can 100% launch their memberships by themselves. They don't need me. They don't need our Tribe program. But if they want to do it faster, they want to do it easier, then they'll see that can be done with Tribe through the stories that we share. So I think you're spot on. I mean, holding space for that transformation, speaking about that transformation, that is what people want. So if you can get me that transformation in 2 pages rather than 200, I will take it. If you can get me that transformation in 5 minutes rather than 60 hours, I'll take it, because people don't want more stuff. We're so overloaded with stuff. We'd much rather have the faster, easier path, or the more convenient path to the result. And that's what people are buying. They're buying the speed and ease of getting the result, not the stuff.
I laugh so much about the industry I work in, which is the health and fitness industry. And I mean, for 99.999% of consumers, there's no mystery behind how to live a healthier life. It's exercise more and eat less. I mean, that's really the base of it, unless you're an elite level athlete. But yet we are seeking out professionals because there's that barrier, there's that obstacle preventing us from doing that thing, or has prevented us before. So focusing on that result, or why your method or your process, or why you are the person that can connect this with more with more results, with more success, with faster, better, whatever the metric is, it builds that confidence. So I really like that. One of
Well,
the thing. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, and to that point, like that's why, by the way, memberships are such a phenomenal tool to helping people get that, because you hit the nail on the head. It's like it's not just even about the information, right? Like as you said, we know how to live a healthier, better life. So what prevents people from doing that? And there are all kinds of things that pop up and challenges that we face. And that's why a membership is a great vehicle, because what happens is you're with people on the journey. You're able to keep them focused on the things that matter right now. They don't have to learn everything all at once. And because if they, the number one reason that people cancel a membership, by the way, is overwhelm. So they're just getting so much that they're not using it. And if they're not using it, they're not making progress. So our goal is to, as a membership site owners, to strip away all the things that are unnecessary to them where they are right now, and just focus on the few things that are going to help them take the next right step. So we don't have to teach them how to go from, completely overweight to an elite athlete overnight. But what we do need to do is we need to focus on where are they right now and what is most important to them on this journey, and keeping them on track and moving and making progress. And because the flip side of people leaving is people stay. And the number one reason that people stay is if they're making progress. As long as they're making progress, it doesn't have to be huge leaps. It just needs to be that step forward. Because in my decades of helping literally tens of thousands of membership site owners, I don't know anybody who has ever said to me that their members are leaving because they're experiencing too much success. Like that just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So as long as we're helping people make progress, people will stay. And it doesn't have to be the big wins. It also, just as important, are the little baby step wins as well.
Early on, before someone launches, they might think of a bunch of reasons why they can't launch it. Maybe it's not robust enough. Maybe I don't know the technology. Maybe I don't know if it's going to work. What advice would you give to listeners who have an idea, they believe the idea could work, but they're just holding back on actually pulling the trigger of launching?
This is probably my most favorite part of all, is helping people bust through those challenges that we that we create for ourselves, those roadblocks that we create for ourselves. Because the reality of it is like through all of my years, we see it every single year. And that is people launching, not with audiences of tens of thousands or thousands, but people with teeny tiny audiences of just a few hundred. And they're doing it in the most simple way using what we call a founding member launch. And essentially it's where you float out an idea to an audience and you say, this is something that I'm thinking about. And what that does is that frames it up perfectly, that this is not all set in stone. This is not done. This is not perfect. All the T's aren't crossed and the I's aren't dotted. But what it is this is an idea, and you're giving people a chance to get in on the idea at the ground floor. And there are so many examples of this. Like I think of Nicholas Wilton as an example. He's in the art niche, and he had a small group of people, about 200 people, and he floated the idea out to them. And he said, look, I wasn't initially thinking of creating a community, but there have been so many of you who have been asking questions like this screenshot, like this screenshot, like this screenshot, which were all screenshots of people saying, hey, how do we stay together as a community? Like, what's going to happen at the end of this was a course. And so he said, so it got me thinking. So the first part about this is like, you're sharing where the idea came from. Then the second part is, then he cast the vision. And so the second part of a founding member launch, you want to cast a vision. Like, what do you see this becoming? He said, so although I haven't created anything yet, here's what I see this becoming. I see it becoming a community where, we're going to help each other go from here to here. And in doing that, I, we'll bring in different people. I'll bring in experts. We'll do this, we'll do that. But you begin casting the vision of what you see this becoming. Third step in a founding member launch is then you want to invite people to come join as a founding member. And part of the magic of being a founding member is they're getting in on the ground floor. So like when you raise the price, their price is going to be locked in at the lowest price ever. So they're going to be rewarded for taking that action early. And the goal for you is you just want real human beings to work with, right? Like you just want to be able to work with, you're not in it in the beginning to generate a whole bunch of cash flow, although that does and will happen. But really what you're looking for is a group of people to begin working with so you can really refine the deliverables in the membership, refine the experience so that you have stories. The stories are your most powerful marketing asset. And that's what you're looking for in the beginning. And then you want the fourth step is you want to invite them. So you want to give, a specific invitation. You want to say, I invite you to join me as a founding member. Here's what that means. That's the third step. Fourth step is the call to action. And that is like, what specifically do you want them to do? So for me, I just keep it easy. I just say, send me a direct message. If you want to join as a founding member, send me a direct message. And I've used this methodology to launch memberships, courses, masterminds, events, software. It's the same process. It's just a single post on social media, on Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube, blog, podcasts, email list, however you communicate with your people. But it starts, number one, by communicating the idea. Where did it come from? Number two, casting the vision. Where is it going? 3, extending the invitation to come and join. 4, giving a specific call to action. Send me a direct message. And 5, following up. And the follow-up is basically like, here's the price as a founding member, and here's the PayPal link or the checkout page. Or you don't have to have any fancy sales page or anything like that. You keep it super simple. And what this does is it gets you out of your own way. It just enables you to float out an idea and gauge the interest of the market. And when people engage in you, now you've got real people that you can work with to refine that idea so that you relaunch, whether it be a month down the road, 2 months down the road, whatever it might be. And so this has been used time and time again, whether it's Anna Saucier launching her membership for infertility practitioners. She had an audience of 326 people, but within 24 hours generated over $5,024 using this founding member launch. And that was the catalyst. Or whether it's Wendy Batten, she has a membership site for paint store retailers, like super niche. She didn't have a huge audience. It was less than 400. Same thing though. She had over 52 founding members for her membership, which was the beginning point for her. Or I think of last year, like Stephanie McFadden. She owned a microblading studio. Now, truth be told, I had no idea what a microblading studio was. You'd notice that by my bushy eyebrows, but I learned from Steph. But long story short, when COVID hit and her studio got shut down, she was like, what do I do? She joined us for the Tribe experience. And so she's like, I'm going to do a founding member launch. So she had roughly 200 regular customers who came into her studio. That's who she did a founding member launch to. Over 110 of them joined, and it created stability in her business that not only saw her through the COVID closures, but when she was able to open again, she had a whole new revenue stream for herself. So I'm just sharing this with you because we don't need big audiences of tens of thousands or thousands. A few hundred is all you need to get started. And with that, know that your founding member launch gets you out of the way. You don't have to have all the things done, all the things thought of. Be transparent and upfront and involve your members in the process of turning that idea into ultimately what it's going to become. Seek their feedback, involve them in that process. They will help shape the direction of that. And that's what creates momentum moving forward. And one final thought on this is like, never underestimate where we can take an idea. I'll give you an example. I just literally today got a message from Heidi, who's in our community. She started her founding member launch she had a brick and mortar business teaching paint parties. Like, people would come and she'd teach them how to paint, and she'd host a party, and then she'd do it again the next night, and then do it again the next night. Well, so hers was primarily a local business, and she started with a founding member launch and welcomed 58 members in her founding member launch. This was 3 years ago. She just did her most recent launch. She now has 2,130 members in her membership. So just never underestimate where this can go. It all starts somewhere. And that founding member group, those are like your OGs. Those are your original people. But that's what creates the momentum moving forward.
I have to call out the fact that not once during this entire conversation did you ever mention the software you need, the technology that you need to implement, all the back end work because it doesn't matter.
Well, and I got a great story of that. Like Cheryl Hatch, who's in our community, was freaked out by all the tech stuff. but she didn't let the tech get in the way of getting going. And so she said, okay, what am I comfortable with? She said, oh, I'm comfortable with like a Facebook group, and I'm comfortable with email. So for 2 years, that's how she delivered the content in her membership. She delivered it weekly via email, and then she had a Facebook group, and she welcomed over 600 paying members before she ever created a members area. So to your point, you don't have to get all involved in the tech. You can keep it super simple and streamlined, but you got to get going, and getting going is what creates the momentum, which will ultimately give you the clarity in terms of what direction you do want to go.
So one last question for you. I just want to know, for individuals who have not started yet, is it too late? Have they missed the boat? And the second part of that is for individuals who have started, but maybe aren't satisfied with the results, can they still go in and reframe this and rework this and get it to a place that it is operating at a better level for them?
Well, number one, is it too late? No, I think we're really just at the beginning. Like the reality of it is the world is shifting this way. If you look at like, big companies like the Amazons and the Netflix and the Spotifys, they're all built around a subscription model. But you're starting to see even like Walmart, like crusty old Walmart or Burger King or IKEA that are moving towards subscription models. And so not only are the big companies moving it, but what that's doing is that's creating almost like a comfort level in consumers that wasn't there 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so now people are used to it. This is just the way in which we engage with companies that we love. It's the reason why, like for me, I love the Peloton, and yes, it's an upfront purchase, but I pay for it every single month as well. And I wouldn't think about canceling my subscription. But the bottom line is that consumers are a lot more comfortable and used to doing business on a recurring basis. And so now what that does is that opens all of us up in all markets. And it's crazy because I get to interact with so many different markets to see what people are creating and turning into memberships, from yoga to health advice to, like, I think of Herb Mentor, my friend John Gallagher, who's got a membership with thousands and thousands of members, that he started because he had a passion for herbs and herbal medicine. And it wasn't that he was the, be all end all expert. He was just passionate about it. And he created this membership, which brought people together. And then he went out and sought for the experts who could help and teach his members be able to make progress with what it is that they were looking to do. So I just think now is just an incredible opportunity, more so than we've ever had before. And not only that, but we're seeing people who have established memberships. Like I think of Brittany last year, who she'd done a great job. She'd launched a membership. It was in the teacher space. And she had welcomed 212 members in her initial launch, but she had kind of stalled. But the good news is, like, when you get the right advice and you can get keyed into the right strategies, both from a how do I attract new members and how do I keep members, magic can happen. And in this past year, she's grown that from 212 members to 774 members just from a couple little tweaks. And so there's a huge opportunity for all of us now, more so than ever, which is why I'm passionate about this. Because if the last year has taught us anything, it's taught us that we need more predictability and stability in our business. And there's no better way to get that than through memberships and subscriptions.
Could not agree more. Stu, where can listeners go to learn more about you, learn more about the Tribe experience, as well as Searchy? Love for you to drop some links.
Yeah, well, I'd encourage everybody to come and join us for a free workshop that we've got starting on April 22nd. And this is where we unpack, like, how do you get started with a membership? What kind of membership should you run? What kinds of things should you be thinking about in terms of the content to provide and how to market and so forth? We'll be unpacking that April 22nd. I'm sure you'll give the listeners a link where they can go to check that out. But I would encourage you to come and join us, because last year, like Steph McFadden, who I mentioned earlier, who had the microblading studio, she launched her membership from the free training that we talked about. And there are many stories of others who did it last year during the free workshop. So come join us. That all starts April 22nd.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure that link is in the show notes. Stu, just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share this. You are a guest we've wanted to have on the show for some time, and just so grateful that we could make it happen.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, buddy.